Hi guys, Jamie here from JB Motion. In today's video, we are going to be making these parachutes. So I've divided this up into two parts. Part one, we're just going to be making the parachutes. We're going to be using a cloth tag, some wind and turbulence, and we're going to be putting on some strings and just attaching a cube. You guys can attach whatever you want. I've just gone with a little, what looks like it might be a giant sugar cube onto mine. But once we've finished part one, we're going to be jumping into part two, where we're going to be covering how to track the camera of this video footage and composite our parachutes into this scene. So let's get started on this. Here we go. Okay guys, so starting off, we're going to grab a disc. This is going to be our parachute, and then let's grab a little man here so we can get some reference for the size of this. So let's just scale this up to about what we think a parachute might be sized at relative to our guy. We can now delete him, and let's hit NB on our keyboards to look at our segments. So we're going to increase the rotation segments by a multiple of 8, so we can go 8 multiplied by 6, and we're doing that so that we have an even amount of points when it comes to making our strings. You'll see what I mean by that in a minute. And we also want to increase our disc segments, something like that. Okay, so now that we have that done, we can make our disc editable, because we are going to have to play with this topology, because this topology is not going to work for our parachute. So let's grab our disc, hit C on our keyboard so that we've made that editable. Let's go into polygon mode, hit UL on your keyboard so we can grab that loop selection tool, and let's select this first one and select the second one from the end. Just make sure you're holding down shift so that you're selecting both of them. Now I want to grab all the polygons in between both of these selections, so go to UF on your keyboard, and that'll give us the fill selection. Hold down shift, and then we can select all those polygons in between, and let's delete those. Now we want to close the hole here, so we're going to go into our edge mode, hit UL on our keyboard for loop selection again. Let's grab that, and then the shortcut for close polygon hole is MD, and we want to make sure we're using the grid option here. And now we have a nice grid, and this is a much better topology for creating our parachute. Okay, so now what we can do is we can right click on our disc, right click and go to simulation tags, and we can add a cloth tag. So if we hit play on this, just to make sure that it is actually going to fall to the ground, and it will any second now. There we go. Okay, so we want a few of these points to be fixed, and the points that we set to be fixed are also going to be the points that have ropes attached to them. So let's grab our rectangle selection tool, and we're going to grab go into point mode. We're going to grab this point, hold down control for this one as well, or shift maybe. Hold down shift for this one and this one. So we're holding down shift so we can get all of them. Then we want to get the ones in between this one and this one. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So we want 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's in the middle. We'll do that all the way around on each quarter of this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then the remaining 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so they're the points that we want to be fixed. And they're also the points that we're going to attach the ropes or the strings of our parachute to. So let's go into our cloth tag, go to the dresser tab, and we'll say fix points and set. Those will all turn purple. And now if we hit play, you can see that that's just going to be hanging. We'll get a few more frames in here. And let's just turn off our work plane and our world axis so we can see this a bit better. So you can see those points are all fixed, and we can actually add a bit of, if we go to our cloth tag surface, let's add some more bendiness and some more stretchiness as well. So now you can see that we're getting kind of an upside down parachute, you might say. So all we need to do is grab a wind force, and if we crank this up to like 2K, maybe like 1.5 of turbulence for a bit of shakiness, and we want our fan to be pointing in the right direction, straight up. So let's make sure we do that as well. Let's rotate that 90 degrees so that it is pointing up the way. And now if we hit play on that, you can see that we're getting the bones of what looks like it could be a parachute. Cool, so let's do a file, save as, and we'll find a place to save this. And we'll call this P-shoot as well. Okay, so we have our parachute kind of rocking, so now we need some ropes or strings. So to do that, we're going to duplicate this. Just hold down Control, click and drag, and we're going to grab all of our faces or all of our polygons, hit Control A with our newly duplicated disk, hit Control A, that'll select all the polygons, hit D on your keyboard for the extrude tool, and let's just click and drag, and that's going to give us, so you can imagine that these edges here are going to be our strings. So it's basically a case of making these as long as we want them to be. So we can go with something like that. Again, eyeballing it. And we want a string for each one of our fixed points on our parachute. So we'll just call this strings or ropes or whatever. And we'll go into our edge selection mode, and we're going to grab each of the ones that have a fixed point attached to it. So hit 9 on your keyboard for your brush selection, and we can grab that. Hold down Shift to grab each of these without deselecting the previous selection. And this and the last one. Now we want to convert these to splines, so right click and go to edge to spline. So now we have all these as splines. We can delete this strings object, and we just have these splines. Each one has its own kind of relative fixed point on our parachute. So let's grab this now, go to point mode, and we're going to select, hit 0 on your keyboard for your rectangle selection tool, and grab all of those bottom points. We're going to scale these down so that they just kind of meet up together. I'm just zooming in so I can make them go really close to each other, and that will do the finest. Zooming out again now. And now we'll do a Control S to save, and we'll see what we have with this. So it's probably just the same kind of thing. We have a bunch of strings. They're not dynamic yet. So we're going to do that now and make these guys dynamic. So let's right click, or before we right click and add a rope simulation or a rope simulation tool, or whatever it's called, rope tag. We want to subdivide this, so we're going to get some bendiness in these strings. So let's go to select the string spline object, go to point mode, hit Control A, and then hit US on your keyboard to subdivide. Do that another bunch of times until we have something like this. So that'll give us, you know, decent bendiness of our strings. So now we can right click on this, go to simulation tags, and let's put on a rope tag on that. So now if we hit play, you'll see now we have this selected, that's why it's not working. So let's go back, deselect that, and hit play on that. Okay, so our strings are just flying up into the air. So what we want to do for the time being is just make sure you're in point mode, go to rectangle selection and grab all of these points. Now remember, it looks like 1, but it's actually 8. Grab all of those, and we're going to go into our rope tag, go to the tag tab, and fixed, we're going to set these as fixed. If we play again, now you can see that's not moving, and everything else is, but you know, our strings are messing up our parachute because they're not yet attached to it. So we're going to do that now. And to do that, we're going to use if I right click on our strings object there and go to simulation tags, let's grab a connector tag. Now what this is going to do is it's going to look for other rigid bodies. So this has a cloth tag attached to it. It's a rigid body, or at least it's a dynamic object, we'll say. It's going to look for other dynamic objects within this search radius, and it's going to try and connect to whatever points are beside it within this search radius. So if I just zoom out here, and if I just, with this connect tag selected, click create, you'll see that all of these points that are beside the points on the parachute have now turned yellow. So if we deselect that now, hit Control S to save and hit play, you'll see now that we have a lot closer to what is looking more like a parachute, I suppose. We can add more segments to our parachute. Let's call this parachute tarp. I don't know if that's correct terminology, but if we go into polygon mode, hit Control A and US on our keyboard, that'll give us more subdivisions. And let's look at that again. And that's going to look a lot better. Cool. So now that we have that done, we want to attach something to our parachute. Now, you know that as you've seen from the start video, I attached like we'll say it was a generator that I had to attach to a parachute for a video that I was making. But for this tutorial, we're just going to grab like a cube, or you guys can grab any primitive object or pretty much anything within reason, as long as there's a place to connect it to this point. And what I mean by place to connect it is, right now this cube doesn't have anywhere to connect, so we need to add some segments, something like that, and something like this. So we don't need any segments on the Y. So you can see there we have a point at which these strings can connect to. And just for the sake of aesthetics, let's click on fillet, and let's just kind of make this a bit more roundish looking. Something like that will do. And now if we just rewind back to frame 0, we want to connect this again to our cube. So if we go to our connect tool, and if we hit create, it should connect to the cube as long as the cube is dynamic. So it's not yet dynamic, so let's make it dynamic. Go right click, go to simulation tags, add a rigid body. And now if we go back to this and go to, let's zoom out here, go to create, you can see we got a little yellow dot that's just after appearing. Now our cube should be connected to our strings. Now remember, this point is fixed. We don't need it to be fixed anymore, so we can go to our rope tag, and we can clear the fixed points that we'd previously set on this. So let's do that, and let's hit play on that. Okay, so now our points are no longer fixed, but our cube is being blown up by our fan, and we don't want to do that. Let's do a file save. We don't want it to do that, so we're going to go to our cube rigid body tag and go to forces, change this to include. So that should solve our issue for us. Cool. So now our cube's no longer being blown up by the wind, but our strings still are. So maybe if we go to our rope tag, if we change this to include, that might fix that for us. So yeah, so now they're kind of draping down, which is looks a bit better, we'll say. Okay, so I wonder now if we, let's just pause this for a second, if we grab this and put this, the parachute and the strings into a null, are we then able to move this around dynamically? Yeah, we are. So now we can move this around dynamically, which is cool. But for the next part of this tutorial, I'm going to be... See, I just broke it. So let's undo that. So for the next part of the tutorial, I'm going to be basically compositing this parachute. As I showed you guys in the first video, I composited these into like some real drone footage, where the parachute is going to be flying down through a scene, or a number of them are going to be flying down through a kind of a field, I suppose, towards land. So that will be pretty cool. Is this cube? Yeah, that cube's actually doing what it's supposed to do. It's just hanging off the ropes, and yeah, so we can actually control that. What we will do before we actually jump into compositing this parachute into real world footage is we'll bake everything as an alembic, and then we'll basically just be able to move this around, you know, animate its position. So a couple of final things you might want to mess around with before we finish this tutorial. You might want to add a couple more segments on this. So if you hit US on your keyboard with that parachute selected, and just see if that looks any better. So yeah, I think that looks a bit more natural. We could reduce the stretchiness of this down to like 200. The bendiness maybe could be brought down as well to like 10. Something like that could be cool. And we could even add like a friction force as well. If we go to simulate forces and add a friction force, we could get kind of less flapping around. Remember, we're only going to be using the part from here, from like frame 50. We're not going to show the whole inflation part from flat to inflated. We could go for some turbulence as well. Let's crank that up to like 200. Or even, we'll go 2K. That's obviously too much. Go 500. Bring the scale to like, that's still too much. Nope. Keep that at 100. We'll just slowly bring it up. Bring down the scale even more. But yeah, that's kind of it. I mean, you guys can mess around with the bendiness on this, bring it even down even further to like 2. That's looking pretty good. If we turn off our lines, NA on our keyboard, we're getting some nice ripples there. what you might imagine you'd get from kind of like a parachute flapping down in the wind. And you could even adjust your rope stretchiness as well. If you go to stretchiness on your rope tag, bring this up to like 200. So that might be a bit too much, but you get what I'm saying. You can mess around with these parameters until you're kind of getting something that you like. But we will play around with these further in the next tutorial, where we're going to be compositing this parachute into some real world footage. But that's it from me, guys, on this one. And I do realize that I haven't made a tutorial in a very, very long time. It's been months. But I am going to try get back into the whole tutorial things, because I do miss it. In all honesty, I haven't been in Cinema 4D much at all lately, aside from just work and stuff like that, but nothing major. So the plan is to get back into consistent uploads. And I appreciate all you guys that have stuck around with me and continue to do so. So thanks again for watching, guys, and we'll see you in the next video, which is going to be compositing this parachute into some real world footage.